We're talking this month about I am prosperous. And today's topic is I am prosperous in daily living. Last week we talked about being prosperous in word, using quotes from Napoleon Hill like thoughts are things, and whatever the mind of humankind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And you have absolute control over but one thing in your life, and that is your thoughts. Your mind, Napoleon said, is your spiritual estate. So, in fact, in pursuit of our understanding in this philosophy of the science of mind, we talk a lot about thoughts and thinking. And that's a good thing, of course, because we're always thinking. Even when we're not paying attention to our own thoughts, sometimes. Or often, as the case may be. Or my point being that our ability to think constantly can sometimes be a negative influence when we're not paying any attention to those thoughts. And of course, the next logical step then is for us to pay attention to the words we use. Because the words are a direct connection to our thoughts. So it's really important to listen to how we express ourselves, because it's a direct review of what we're really thinking, what's in there at core. The first thing I'm doing today is clarifying what I mean by I am prosperous in my daily living. It's important that we don't misinterpret that to mean we live beyond our means, or we shirk our responsibility for meeting our financial or other obligations. What I'm really talking about is inviting in an attitude and an expectation of demonstrating a prosperous life. By definition, the word prosperous means flourishing, successful, well off. And although there's no reference to quantity of money in that definition, how often we interpret the word prosperous to be limited to that outward appearance, money, in order to be present. Well, probably no surprise to you that I have a reference book to share with you this morning. Ever thus, yes? I make a point of referring you to the writings of a myriad of people, of thinkers and writers, to give you a myriad of opportunities to see how these principles show up in such a variety of ways, words, and expressions. This little book is called The Science of Getting Rich, and it's by Wallace Wattles. Anybody ever heard of Wallace Wattles? Well, here he is. And this book was written originally in 1909, which may sound like a long time ago, but in the total scheme of things, it's the blink of an eye. Wattles chronicles his lifetime in the consideration of the laws of success as he found them in the works of the world's great philosophers. Wow, who does that sound like? Very similar to what Dr. Holmes did. And incidentally, you'll notice at the top of this little book, it says, as featured in the best-selling book, The Secret. Remember The Secret? That's in your lifetime, yes? That was not even 20 years ago, less than that. So here is another one of these gems that has been looked at and incorporated into some newer expressions of these same philosophies. So while we could do all this research ourselves of going back and reading all of the great philosophers and theologians and whoever else you might choose to read. We could also, and most of us do, begin with the ideas of people like Wallace Wattles and Ernest Holmes and Ralph Waldo Emerson and Judge Troward. Begin with their ideas and then augment them as we see fit individually. We may be particularly drawn to a specific writer, and consequently then we spend a greater amount of time digesting their philosophies. But even in that, we continue to find these parallels. Many paths up the mountain. So many different ways of expressing the truth. Wallace states clearly and emphatically that our right, I have to be careful not to move these pages inadvertently in the breeze here, that our right to life includes our right to have free and unrestricted use of all the things necessary for our fullest mental, spiritual, and physical unfoldment. There's a science to becoming prosperous, he says. It's a natural law that like always produces life results. Like always produces life results. Like results. Sorry, let me say that again. Like always produces like results, which is another way of saying what you think about comes about. Or if you want to go way back into history, it is done unto you as you believe. Like always produces like. So what's showing up in my life is what I'm expecting, even though it may not look like what I thought it was going to look like. Wattles goes on to say that becoming prosperous is not a matter of environment. Becoming prosperous is not due solely to the possession of talent. It's not the result of saving. It's not due to doing things others fail to do. It's not dependent on having capital to begin with. What is essential is thinking and understanding. What is essential is learning to deal with the world as it is. Not what I think it should be, but how it is. And he says, if anybody can be prosperous, so can you. Same thing that Holmes says, if anybody, anywhere, at any time has manifested peace, a trip, money, health, if anybody, anywhere, at any time has manifested any one or more of those things, so can I. Because it's a part of a universal principle, and it's a universal idea. And it is not limited to any one individual or group or philosophy. It's universal. One. So Wattles says prosperity occurs in every business and profession. It occurs in every form of talent. In fact, he says, developing your talents in doing what you love best in a place you love being is a formula for success. Duh. Doing what you love doing in a place you love being is a tried and true formula for success. Why not? Somebody wrote a book about that a long time ago, but in our generations. Do what you love, the money will follow. Remember when that book came out? Marcia Sinitar. Marcia Sinitar has since gone on to much more spiritual book titles. But still using that same premise. Do what you love. The money will follow. The joy will follow. The health will follow. The relationships will follow. Because, once again, you're setting that energy within you and around you in a positive way. So you'll note that the title of his book is The Science of Getting Rich. And he addresses that too. He says what science is that it's a principle. Thought, here's the principle. Thought is the only power which can produce tangible riches of any kind from formless substance. From formless substance. Which is another name for God, for those of you who are making a list. Formless substance. With the capacity to become form, which is what you and I are. And to direct our thoughts to create form or manifest form. That's how we build radios and iPhones and clocks. Because we are directing that formless, the thinking, into form. Cause and effect, thought into form. Basics of metaphysics. And here it is, coming from Wallace Wattles back in 1909. Yeah. And then he goes on to describe it in his words as to how this comes about. He says, there is a thinking stuff. There's another name for God, thinking stuff, from which all things are made, and which in its original state permeates, penetrates, and fills the interspaces of the universe. I had never thought of it that way. Most of the universe is empty space, you know, just like most of your body is empty space. Everything that we see in form is mostly empty space. We know that now because we've been able to look into the inner recesses of the body, of nature, of outer space. And here's Wattles saying, and all those spaces in between the matter is that thinking stuff that we call God, or creative energy, or life force. And even though we don't see it as with mass and volume, we know it's there. It's sort of what's between the mass and the volume, just like in your body. So he says a thought in this substance produces the thing that's imaged by the thought. It's almost like he was sitting in on one of Holmes' lectures or one of Trower's creative process lectures. And to my knowledge, he didn't know either one of them, face to face. Then he goes on to say, we can form things in our thoughts, and by impressing our thought upon formless substance, can cause the things we think about to be created. Where have we heard that before? Again and again and again. I mean, that is classic Trower, isn't it? Thomas Trower, coming out of the United Kingdom by way of India, and practicing all of his adult life in the law. And so, boy, was he clear on law. We can form things in our thoughts, and by impressing our thoughts upon formless substance, which is that space all around, can cause the things we think about to be created. where's this guy been? You know? I mean, this is cool stuff. And then he says, leave the competitive mind behind and develop the creative mind. Form a clear mental picture of what you intend. And with faith and purpose, do all that can be done each day, doing each separate thing in an efficient manner. He didn't say anything about the lottery. He didn't say anything about manufacturing $100 bills. He didn't say anything about going to the horse races. In fact, he didn't say anything about money at all. Not a word. And yet, whether our intention is to manifest money, or manifest material things, or manifest peace and joy and love and compassion, all four of those tenets work, don't they? And now listen to these words. Dwell upon this until it's fixed in your mind, until it has become your habitual thought. Read these statements over daily. Meditate upon them and put them into memory. In other words, make this an integral part of your daily living. Make this an integral part of your daily living. I am prosperous in my daily living. And then take that in any direction you choose. This is such pure science of mind, it's mind-boggling, and yet at the same time, no surprise, because truth is truth wherever it shows up. Here's two more just brief considerations from Wallace in his book, The Science of Getting Rich. If you so choose, you can read it and expand on these. The first one is the impression of increase. He says the desire for increase is inherent in all of us. It's the fundamental impulse of the universe. Simply a desire, an aspiration for a more abundant life is what sets this in motion. And when we talk about the desire for increase, to learn more, to do more, to be more, to have more, to see more, that's what he's talking about. And the fundamental impulse of the universe, infinity ever expanding. Thank you, Albert Einstein. Infinity always expanding, just as we are. And then here's the other thing for thought from Waddles. There are ways of bringing about what you do want. And this is the concept of conscious power in action. The key word there, conscious. Conscious power in action. What is it I intend? As opposed to don't let thus, and thus happen. See the difference? The conscious power in action of my intention. That's what I want the universe to hear. That's what I intend in my life. And I'm going to let the rest of it just simply dissipate away from lack of attention and energy. Because that's how it works in the universe. And these guys knew this before we knew these principles in universal unfolding. Before we knew about quarks, before we had electronic telescopes, before we had computers that could measure this kind of stuff. These guys knew this. How did they do that? Conscious connection, power in action. Patanjali, the great Indian saint and poet in the 3rd century before the Common Era, said it this way. When you are inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, all your thoughts break their bonds. Your mind transcends limitations. Your mind transcends limitations. And your consciousness expands in every direction. Dormant forces, faculties, and talents come alive, and you discover yourself to be a greater person than you ever dreamed yourself to be. The 3rd century before the Common Era. Words like that being expressed. I believe that being prosperous and successful in life is not only possible, but it's natural. And I believe as we make this a part of our daily life, these ideas, Holmes' ideas, Chopra's ideas, Wayne Dyer's ideas, and on and on and on the list goes. As we make these ideas a part of our daily living, the entire human race, the entire world, can only benefit as well. So I am going to continue talking this month about prosperity as a principle, which shows up in every area of our lives, including but not limited to our bank accounts and our portfolios. I have one more talk on I am prosperous this next week, and that is I am prosperous indeed. 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 And then next month, I'm going to do a series on lavish abundance. So if the word lavish is uncomfortable to you, you have 2 weeks to get used to it. And then we'll talk about it. It's a great word. Lavish abundance. Lavish opulence. You know, let these words roll off your tongue. Let them rattle around in your mind. Get comfortable with them. Because the ongoing truth is it's done unto us as we believe. Therefore, when we think thoughts of prosperity and success, when we speak positive words regarding our prosperity and success, only prosperity and success can follow in our thoughts, in our words, in our deeds, and in our daily living. So next week, I am prosperous indeed. And so it is. Thank you.